Greetings, Akwaba, Karibuni. Welcome to Eliwananda live stream on Saturday, the 1st of April, 2023. This is going to be an extremely exciting and extremely important conversation that I'm going to have with two wonderful children of Africa, an African son and African daughter, who I've known for a few years now, Michael Echo Richardson and Abena Richardson of the Destination Africa Group and also of the Afro Parenting Village. And the subject of today's conversation, as you know, because you've logged in, the subject of today's conversation is empowering African children with Michael and Abena. And specifically, we're asking the question, are we passing on our colonial mentality to our children? And just to give you a little bit of a context, a little bit of a background before I invite these guys on board. So first of all, I've been a parent. I've been a parent now for 5 years, and I'm an African. I'm a black African, and I'm very proud of being African. And for me, as someone who is extremely I'm fairly conscious, fairly woke, if you want to call me that, very conscious of my African heritage, my black heritage, very aware of our situation in the world as black people. And becoming a parent has kind of put me right at the cutting edge of the black experience, of what it means to be a black person in this world, because obviously so much of what we have in our heads as adults, as African adults, came into our heads and came into our psyches, came into our ways of thinking, our ways of behaving, acting, and so forth. So many of those things came during our formative years. And the fact of the matter is that as long as our children are being raised, as long as we're not raising our children consciously, as long as we're not raising our children deliberately and really deliberately aiming to instill in them a strong African consciousness, a strong black pride, and counteracting the colonial mentality, then we're just going to keep raising up grown African men and women who are going to just keep repeating the cycle of colonialism and neocolonialism and so on. I've had some many experiences as a parent already where, it's really come home to me how complicated it is raising black children, particularly here in the UK, where we make up only 2-3% of the population, if that, maybe even less than that. Actually, maybe it's about 1%, 2% of the population. Being black in a white country comes with all sorts of baggage, all sorts of hang-ups, all sorts of covert and overt forms of racism and anti-blackness, and all this sort of stuff comes by living in a place like the United Kingdom. But having said that, similarly to the United States as well, there are a lot more, percentage-wise, there are a lot more black people in the United States. However, there are different forms of the same thing, different forms of the same anti-blackness, racism, colonialism, and so forth. And of course, even in the motherland itself. So Michael Echo and Abena are based in Accra, in Ghana. They're waiting in the studio, ready to be invited in. They what does that say there? Yeah, they've moved to Ghana. They moved to Ghana about 4 years ago, and as we're going to start to hear from them as well, Africa, the motherland, is not a bed of roses. Just because you're in the continent doesn't mean that suddenly you're free from anti-blackness. Just because you're in Ghana, Uganda, where my family's from, Cameroon, Zimbabwe, wherever you might be, doesn't suddenly mean that everyone is conscious, everyone is woke, everybody is Pan-African and woke and so forth. Not at all. If anything, and this is something I'm going to ask these guys a little bit later, if anything, it might be a little bit worse in some ways, because it's so hidden. Because you're surrounded by black people, you can think, everything's fine, but actually it's almost harder to spot the anti-blackness in a sense, or to be aware of the obvious anti-blackness when you're surrounded by black people. So we're gonna talk about all of these things. Destination Africa is so just to give you a little bit of a context with regard to my history of these guys. My two sons, my eldest son, a couple of years ago during the pandemic, Destination Africa ran a series of weekly live youth empowerment sessions, which to be honest, those sessions were instrumental in me keeping my sanity, and also instrumental in my eldest son, who's now 5, but back then he was, I think, 3 or 4, in him kind of starting to develop that sense of his African identity. So what we do every Saturday, we would log into these sessions, and the Destination Africa crew would just take over. There was Africans focused education. We would learn, the children would learn all on live stream, all, on a Zoom call. The children would learn about different African countries, the capitals of the countries, what were the main industries of the countries and so forth, the main resources and so forth, the, prime minister, blah, blah, blah. We would do some learning about we would learn some Twi, actually. So Twi, the language of one of the main languages in Ghana. We would learn some Twi, and I learned, my son was probably learned more Twi at that point than he could even speak of any Swahili, which is the language that is on my side of the coast, my coast of Africa. And so, yeah, we did these sessions. It was so beautiful. There were people joining from Ghana, from the UK, from the United States. And it was just great. It was great to see the level of maturity of these children as the weeks went by. So my son, for example, we started off very shy. It was always, was never sitting still, really, really hard work to get him to focus. But by the end, as the lessons went by, as he got more comfortable, he really came out of his shell and he really blossomed. And I attribute much of his current, level of development and stage of confidence to the work that the Destination Africa crew do. So one of the things we're going to talk about a little bit later when they join, we're going to talk about a new course that these guys have started, which is a similar kind of thing, but it's an on-demand video teaching course aimed at African and African descendant children. So whether you're from the diaspora, from the motherland or whatever, and also mixed children as well, aimed at instilling in them or I suppose I'd put it, aimed at empowering them to get to become aware of themselves, to be comfortable and conscious of themselves as Black African children, and to blossom and go forth and be to create the future that we want to see for the African continent and from the diaspora for the African world overall. Just wanted to say, please make sure that you like this video, because that will definitely get the algorithm, the YouTube algorithm will support and promote the video more. So just like the video and please share it as well while we're waiting for Michael and Abena. So let's quickly talk about, I'm going to give you my understanding or my initial thoughts on this point of colonial mentality. What do I think of when we talk about the colonial mentality? Peace and blessings to everyone who's in the stream so far. Peace and blessings to you, Paul Morris. Very loyal participant in these live streams. By the way, we do these live streams every Saturday. Most of the time, we are reading through books that I feel are pertinent to increasing our understanding of just the world around us as from an African-centered perspective. So the book that we're currently reading, which we're taking a break from this week, is this book here, which is called Urugu, an African-centered critique of European cultural thought and behavior by Mama Marimba Ani. So just so you know, that's what we normally do, but we're taking a short break from that for this week to I suppose you can look at it as, yeah, we do all this reading and we do all this studying, which is great, but sometimes it's good to talk a little bit about practicalities. And so it's good for us to talk about the practical application of this as far as parenting goes. Not parenting, but like child rearing and education. So peace to you, Everything is Politics. Always a blessing, always a pleasure to have you on board. And peace to you as well, Leah Boggs, as well. Shout out to you guys over there on the other side of the Atlantic as part of our diaspora. So colonial mentality. I'm going to kind of riff a little bit on this, and then in a few minutes, I'll invite the Destination Africa crew people on board. For me, colonial mentality is basically ways of thinking, philosophies, assumptions about what life is supposed to be about, what a good life is, which are rooted in non-African form, which are rooted in outside of African forms of thinking and thought, if that makes sense. So my main purpose of this channel, my main purpose of the live streams that we're doing is all about, first of all, exposing what coloniality is, what colonial mentality is. So, for example, one of the books that we did just recently was called The Invention of Women by a Yoruba scholar called Oyeronke Oyewumi. And she pointed out that with regard to the Yoruba, the Western concept of how men and women are supposed to relate to each other, i.e. men at the top, women at the bottom, women being seen as like a sort of degraded version of men having all the power in society, men having all the control in family, all that sort of stuff, which we take as a given in the West. We think that this is how societies have been organized forever, all across the world, everywhere. Oyeronke Oyewumi points out that nope, not in Yoruba society. And she goes through a whole book basically pointing out, even just from the language of Yoruba itself, all the way across to the forms of familial living, social organization, and so forth, that just wasn't the case. And for me, that's a perfect example of a colonial mentality, because often, and this is something that one of my someone commented on Instagram, pointed out that there are so many things that we consider to be African culture and purely African culture, that actually is not African culture, has actually been imported through the violent process of colonialism. And so our perceptions with regard to male and female relations fall squarely into the colonial, what I call the colonial mentality. And our job, actually, as African people in particular, but everyone everywhere, frankly, our job is to try and identify those elements of our thinking, those elements of our philosophy and our view of society, our view of childhood and parenting and so forth, which are a product of the colonial experience, and working out how we can root them out and replace them with something that, something that's going to serve our interest as Black people, as African people. That's how I basically understand a colonial mentality. Now, I believe we are ready to go. I think our Ghana, our Accra studio, I'm getting some, good. Yeah, I'm being directed that the Accra family are ready to go from the Accra studio. So, without further ado, peace out to you, Kavan, Brian. Yes, indeed. Shout out, really, really blessed to have you on board, my brother. And family business blueprint, locked in, locked on. Good, let's do this. All right, so Michael and Abena Richardson incoming. Bosh. There we go. Make sure you're off mute, guys. Make sure you're off mute, please. Can't hear you guys.
Okay. Hey guys, we're locked in. You know what? We've connected the fiber. We're working. We're here. We're ready to have this conversation.
As they say in Ghana, we are live and colored. Live and
colored. Good. Yes, indeed. Lovely to see you guys again, man. We had a live stream. Was it 2020? 2 years ago? I think it was 2 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So time flies by. I was with my wife as well, who's not here. She's gone to police the children. I was going to say she's gone to just keep the children away from here.
Yes.
So
we wanted to join. We wanted to share their testimony.
You should have brought them all on.
You know what? Next, there's going to come a time soon where they are going to join us on these streams, because they'll have a lot to say, and I think they'll bring a lot of vim and life to the proceedings. So, how are you guys today? Anywho.
We are good. We're doing even better for actually being on this live. We have to say we're loving the new hairdo. It's the first time we've seen it. Check it out.
This is the first public launch of the new.
You know what, guys? If you're liking it, give them a like. Give them a like.
Guys, get to work.
Things are very good here. We had a trip yesterday to Parliament House in Ghana, and it was a leadership tour for some of the young children and families to see what one of the seats of power is like in Accra. So they were fortunate enough to meet like the shadow minister and a few other pertinent members of parliament. So it was really good. They asked questions and they were getting that critical thinking and getting your minds ready for the challenges and to lead us tomorrow. So it was a great day yesterday.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. It's all part of our leadership and advocacy. What would I call it? The leadership role of a child and how they would take over the legacies of those that have been before them. So the parliamentarians came out in their numbers and they asked things pertaining to their hearts, and it was really overwhelming. Really overwhelming. Wow. I'm telling you, the next generation are going to be game changers. So
Yeah, so I was just before we came in, I was watching the video with Nshira, your daughter, asking a question. I just thought, wow, look at this. Like, but
you didn't have that when we were younger, but hey.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, like, have I ever been to Parliament? I think I may have been outside the Parliament here in the UK once.
Right.
You drove by on the bus, like
yeah, literally. Oh yeah, look, it's the Parliament, and that was pretty much it. But yeah, let's jump straight in. We've got a lot to discuss, a big topic to discuss. I kind of gave my little feeder of a perception of what I understand to be a colonial mentality, but I'm going to throw the floor open to you, family. To first of all, if you could, tell us what's your perception of a colonial mentality. What does that mean to you?
Okay, he's going to throw me in the deep end. Every time Mike looks at me like this.
You know what? Ladies first. We are honoring our ladies by giving them the first voice.
And he throws me in the fire. So, guys, don't come for me because it's not easy. It's not easy going first. What is a colonial mindset? This is a really interesting question. And we have really been looking forward to doing this live, but simply because I think it's where we happen to find ourselves. And it's where we happen to maneuver our ways, our thoughts, our everything, construct our lives in and around that. So what are our thoughts of a colonial mindset? I think every time we're asked a question, we like to go to the source as opposed to just tackling what is it saying. So, you look at the word mindset, and the root of the word mindset is to actually look at everything that is set. We set our times, we set our lives by certain things, we set our alarm clocks by certain things. And once it's set in the mind, that is it, because you live your life by it. It forms your values, it forms your habits, and it tells you whether or not you're doing things intelligently or non-intelligently. So once you've formulated that in your mind and you find that, this is how I'm fitting into the community, this is how I'm fitting into the family, then you decide, right, this is how we're going to live our lives, whether it's through confirmation or whatever. We pass that on to our children, and then it becomes cyclical. And then they pass it on, and then they pass it on. So it becomes generational, so to speak. And then I guess when you look at the word colony, or having a word of a colonized mind, I think that came from farmers, whereby they used to do things, or they used to cultivate things by rows. So you would always have a particular way by which you would set your seeds, certain rows, in the hope that they would then germinate in a way that they should. But I think I don't want to use the word oppressor. Should I use the word oppressor? I think the thought or the motive behind the way they colonized us. And I remember when we started teaching Destination Africa to the children, and one of the parents said to me, when you're colonized, you're literally working as a soldier bee or a soldier ant. You have the queen who is at the top of the colony, and she sets your rules, she sets your values, and she tells you exactly what to do. And right now, I think, do we have a colonized mindset based on the source? As Africans, I think we have to self-analyze, and we have to analyze who we are in the community and who we are as people of the motherland. Do our children, are we instilling in our children to have a foreign name, to have a foreign language, to have foreign history, to have a foreign educational system, to have a foreign spiritual system? And I think if we're answering yes to all of those questions in its entirety, even 3 out of 5 of those questions, then the answer has to be yes. And if so, is it benefiting us? And if not, then what are we doing about it to change things for the next generation?
Good. Yeah. And I mean, I say I can't really add much to that. That was a nice one.
He did it.
That was a nice one.
He threw me in the deep end, chop knuckle.
She floated.
Very good. Okay. Yeah. Just run those 5 questions that you said there again, please, Abena. So, do we have a foreign name? Do we have a foreign
language.
Language.
Yeah,
Mhm.
language. Yeah,
Religion.
religion, and we teaching our children a foreign history, and even geographically, where are we?
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So do you guys want to, would you like to go through those then? Those five I like that. Those yeah, those five domains then. So foreign oh, you can pick whichever one you want to start with actually. Unless
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Sure thing.
So yeah, so in terms of, I'll start with the continent. So it's one of these things. As you talk about mindsets and value systems, and to be colonized means it's another system being put on top of yours, or your value system being changed or altered. Now, you know what? I have a saying that your skin is your passport, and it tells you, or it tells people where you're from, and it shows that there's a history to you. Now, in terms of the African continent, how well do we know the continent of Africa from varying levels, from geographically to the countries, to the flags, to the capitals, and just information as a whole? Most children, when they are probably grow up outside of their natural environment, if they're around the world, what you find is absorb that culture of the land that they're presently in. And now what tends to happen is they tend to lose track or focus, or that connection with the motherland. And it's checking to see, are my children aware of the continent? We have a saying here that, and there are 54 countries of the African continent. How many of those countries do your children know, or even aware that exists? Because all of those are potentials to improve the continent, to make a life for yourself, and to uplift us as a people as a whole. But if your children are not aware of it, then that's a sign that you have a colonial mindset.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. So I think now that he's covered the continent, it's interesting because when you also look at, you can take a child out of the continent and you can be in the environment of people who are not predominantly from your tribe. But then there are certain people who strive in who they are. And when I say strive, they're very intentional and very purposeful, and in making sure that their children understand the very value of where they're coming from, the core of who they are. And there's something about knowing about the core of who you are that is unshakable. And they know this. So I'll use an example of the Indians in the UK, or the Chinese in the UK. Many of them would ensure that their children have their names. They speak their languages even before they start schools. They know about their culture. They know about their food. They know about their spirituality. They know everything that's all encompassing and everything that it takes to be a Chinese or an Indian. Now, let's say by the time that child gets to school and you're calling them Ribesh, or you're calling them Rabesh, but their name is Rabesh. They would correct you until thy kingdom come and ensure that you say that name correctly before you continue with your conversation. So it's a level of pride, and it doesn't matter where you are. There's that level of pride that ensures that wherever they go, not only do they know who they are, but because they know who they are, they succeed. So they can go, you have the Chinese, the Indian, the Polish will come to a certain country with absolutely no money and give it a few years. Because of that unity that they have, which starts primarily as an individual knowing and understanding thyself, and then that extends as a community, collectively they become successful, and they ensure that whatever they're making not only stays in that community, but they're also using it to build their economy back home. So it transcends so far when you have an understanding of yourself. Now, let me not digress. Now you've covered the motherland, we can start with names, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So names I find so interesting because I think names are so powerful, so powerful. And we were speaking to somebody when we first came to Ghana, and he was saying that with the way that we used to raise our children in the past, because everything that we did was so cyclical, you would go and refer to the ancestors, or not even to the ancestors, you would refer to the elders, and they would be able to illustrate to you who was coming back, because we believe, you always hear that saying, Ellie, that you will always hear, oh, this one is uncle has come back, his granddad, he's been here before. Exactly. And I guess when you look at everything in life, everything in nature, should I say, organically, is cyclical. But we have been made to believe as colonials that we're not cyclical. We come here by ourselves and that's it. But then the very evidence of who we are physically, we've got our ancestors' blood running through us physically, we've got their DNA running through us physically. So emotionally and spiritually, there must be something in that memory of the DNA that's also running in there physically. Now, your colonialist would say to you, I don't want you to have the name of your ancestors, anymore. So as a belief system now, we're not even going back to the elders to make that level of reference, because we're now seen as something that's archaic. It's seen as something that's old-fashioned. And many historians would say to you, when colonials came, they came to civilize, they came to Europeanize, they came to Christianize or Arabize. So we take on the culture as well as take on everything else. And to be civilized means to have somebody else's name. But what does it mean to have somebody else's name? When you give something a name, it's ownership. A name identifies what something is primarily, first and foremost, before anything else. Before you can even say it, the name has to exist before you can say it. So a name identifies something. And if your colonial supervisor is saying to you at that time, I don't want you to have the name Kweku, your name is going to be Andrew, because that's the name that's easiest for me to pronounce. That's ownership. And we don't see that those are the connotations that go alongside it. So what are the repercussions or the consequences of having somebody else's name? I always use marriage as an example. When you get married to somebody, traditionally, you will take on that person's name. So right now, I am a Richardson, because by marriage and tradition and everything else, I'm a Richardson. If in the case that, a couple decide to divorce, you denounce that name because that level of ownership is no longer there. And I think when we take on a name, now we're doing that voluntarily, we have to consider all the dynamics of what it means to take on somebody else's name, because you are still under that person's ownership, even before you even come to see where you are under that ownership and how much they control you under that ownership. So names are really, really powerful, and it transcends on so many different levels. And I think it's something that primarily as Africans, we really need to consider why we take on certain names. And we have to be very honest with why we take on certain names, and also ask ourselves why we're not taking on the names of the people that came before us and the very people whose blood runs through us. So the first thing that I think we really have to look at is names.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ellie,
Go on. Let me not interrupt your flow.
I was going to touch on languages, African languages.
Let me talk about names for a second then. So that's a very, very important point. I agree completely. It's interesting what you said there about ownership. Just a little thing. So before you came on air, I was talking about Yoruba culture.
Right.
And my understanding, having read this book, is that in Yoruba culture, they didn't have that thing of, when you get married, the woman takes the name of the man. That just wasn't a thing. And also, I know from our culture, just the point of interest is that in our culture, so the Bagisu culture in East Africa, and I think the Baganda, well, they are definitely the same. It's not only there's no name changing when you get married, everybody has their own surname, like individual surname. So, for example, you'd have 4 children, each of them would have their own. So, be Eliwananda, there'll be David, whatever. Everybody would have their own name. So it's just an interesting
different values.
Yeah. Just to touch on that, Ellie, that is so interesting. Just to touch on that, in the Ashanti tribe, it's exactly the same. So you would have 4 children from the same household that would have different names. And that was because what I mentioned at the very beginning of going to the elders and finding out who was coming back, you were named after that person. So you would have, say it was, Ifyasewa, you would have Ifyasewa, and this is the new Ifyasewa coming to continue Ifyasewa's legacy, and then so on and so forth. So patriarchy changed so much, and that was one of the things that,
I didn't realize that. So that's very interesting. And then what would you say is, why do you think, well, I mean, it's probably an obvious question, but why are we taking these names from, what's the basic reason that we are, throwing all of our own traditions out the window when it comes to naming our children these English names and European names? What's the deal there? Why do you think that is?
It's a connection. I think when they came, the colonials decided that there had to be a level of control whereby even in their absence, that level of control would continue. So when they left, we kept their educational systems, we kept their religious systems, and everything is connected. So education came with the church. And when the church came, we were told that in order to be civilized, you would need to have a biblical name. At the time, I don't think we ever made the connection that biblical name was an English name. So we put a spiritual emphasis on the names that we give our children, as well as an educational emphasis to show that you're moving forward in life. You're no longer primitive. So here, you would still speak to people in 2023 that would say to you, my name is Ruby, and my house name is Sewa, so to speak. So we were taught even before your child could speak that your title had to be one that was foreign, one that was given to you by those who control you, and who you are by your very core had to be hidden and kept in the house. So, even if it's you're not called by that name at home, it's on your birth certificate, nobody's going to know about it. We have to hide it. We have to hide everything about who we are, and we have to present everything that we've been told we are, and then our narrative is then defined by somebody else, but it has to start somewhere, and it started with the name. So it's it's a very kind of well thought of, powerful, structured movement whereby it's a full control of the individual. It's very, very wholesome, but that's why it starts with the name. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. All right. So let's move on before we move on to language, I think you said, Michael, just shout out to Everything's Politics, who said, such a refreshing conversation. It's cathartic for our souls. 100.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So glad you're enjoying it.
Good job. All right. So I'll move on to African languages. So, I mean, one of the key things is your language. I remember, I don't know if you guys have seen the film La Amistad, where they captured some slaves, took them over to the Americas, and one of the main things was to force them to not speak their language. Because once somebody can't speak their language, they lose that connection. They lose that connection with their culture, with their kindred spirit, with their history, with their heritage, with philosophy, with art, with law, with so much that you lose. You're literally just a shell. You're a physical person, but you've lost that connection. And I've shared my story with you and probably people before, where I had an awakening moment myself on my first trip to Ghana as an adult. Where initially, up until that point, I could speak my mother tongue, probably 20%, could get by enough. And up to that point in my life, it was just a tool which I used to not get cheated, to listen to the adults when they were speaking. But I didn't have the fullness and the richness or the understanding of it as to what that language actually did and what it connected me with. There was only one situation that happened where I was at my family's house and I couldn't add my bits to the conversation, and I really wanted to, and the situation turned in such a way that it made me realize that, you know what, I need to speak my mother tongue. It's more than just something nice to have. It's not an extra. It should be part of the core of who I am. And
Michael, how old were you roughly at that point, if you don't mind me asking?
At that time, I was 23.
Okay, 23. Wow. Young realization.
Yeah, and grew up most of my life in the UK. You bought into the UK values, that colonialized mindset that you can do and achieve anything as long as you work hard and X, Y, and Z. And then you get to a certain point and you realize the glass ceiling is there. We heard about the Windrush issues and just the continual stuff going on. That you realize that, you're not 100% British. And as I said before, your skin is your passport. It tells a journey that your people came to, whichever land you went to, but you were from somewhere. And it's about knowing that history and having that connection. So even for us, we decided that, once I got that awakening, I said, I don't want my children to go through that. I don't want them to go back to Ghana and people will be like, oh, there's a saying, oh, brony, like white person or foreigner. I want them to be able to connect and be able to speak the language, to know the culture, so that they would know they belong. And I think that's one of the things when your value system gets taken away. That your language isn't that important. The social services may tell you, oh, don't teach your children your mother tongue and English; it would confuse them. But at the same time, it's fine to learn French and Spanish. Many of the Africans or those who've traveled the diaspora and left the continent have probably had more French lessons than they have their mother tongue lessons. And these are all signs of, colonialism, the value system. Oh, I'm willing to pay X amount for French lessons, but if it's my mother tongue, if it's not free, oh, I don't really want to do it. Or I'll wait until my children are 16, 17, 20 years old, and I'll send them home to the village to speak with grandma for 6 weeks, and then they'll learn the language. All these sorts of things are the lack of importance and understanding what your language or your mother tongue does for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. Can I just add something to the language thing as well? Really interesting that we decide that we as a people don't put any emphasis on speaking our languages at all. And I think, again, it goes back to very, very young. When you speak to a lot of adults, they would say to you, oh, the Chi language, I can only speak for people that you speak to in Ghana, or the Ga language or the Ewa language, they will learn it at some point, they will know it. But the English is very, very important. And that's how we see our languages, simply because when our children are young, we have left our children being educated to a foreign person, a foreign entity, so to speak, and they're going to teach you how to speak their mother tongue, because again, we're talking about being liberated, right? So when you're taught how to speak or to do everything, we don't have any books in any subjects that's translated in our languages at all. All our books are in English. So from a very early age, when we do the ABCs, when we do the telling the time, we do the colors, all of that, we now associate intelligence with a foreign language. And if you can't speak that foreign language, we actually laugh at each other. And if we can't speak our own languages, we're like, oh, well, never mind, so be it. If we were being taught by the right people, we would understand that our languages have vibrations and even spiritual connotations that we don't understand as so powerful. We don't even understand how the English language is made up. And once you know how the English language is made up, it doesn't even hold, a pin to African languages. But again, it's a value system. And because we associate intelligence with that foreign language, we don't even go back to try and find out the value systems of our languages. The second thing is transparency. So if you're speaking somebody else's language, you're completely exposed, because everything that you do, they know about. You're having talks in Parliament, you're trying to plan for the economy, everything is in English, and they know about all of this. And so we don't have any secrets. We don't have anything that we can say we hold to our own, because we have to communicate by mouth, by tongue. Okay, so then yesterday, it was such a rude awakening when we went to the Parliament. So we're sat in there, and the way that it's structured, it's a circular
auditorium.
Yeah. That's the one. My English no good. That one. That's the one. So we're sat in there, and then my son says to me, Mommy, this is what did he say? It's a Roman, what's that thing that they had? A Roman
Colosseum.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Colosseum. It wasn't the word Colosseum. He used it as a Roman Senate. so to speak.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh.
Yeah. So he said, we have literally adapted absolutely everything from them. And he said, it's a level of control. And this is a difference when your children know themselves as compared to when you don't. So I'm like, of course, like he says, we've adapted everything and we're speaking in a way and with everything, all the legislations, everything is in their way. So I said to him, imagine if we had something of our own that we used, even in Parliament. He said, Mummy, but we do. We've just thrown it away. And that blew my mind, because it's not even as though we don't have, but it's that we have superimposed something else over our own and don't realize that it leaves us totally, exposed. So the language thing, I just wanted to sort of add to what Michael was saying. Yeah.
I'm going to add one small point on top of language. It also adds an economic aspect, because when you can't speak your mother tongue, what it does is they tell you your language isn't that important. But then they also use numbers and stats for making their languages more important or other languages more important. So there's that void of where you're like, oh, you know what? Go and learn French, because French is widely spoken on the African continent. And numbers-wise, if you speak French, it would actually be better for you because you can travel more freely across the continent. Or if you go to the Americas, if you learn Spanish, then you can travel most of the Americas, speaking Spanish, and it works out well for you. So what we do is we follow the pattern of the, wherever money or commerce is going. So now China is the big thing. So now many people are spending time teaching or wanting their children to learn Mandarin or Chinese. And all these things that they're driven by economic figures. But the reality is, your mother tongue, whether you come from a small nation of 5 million or Nigeria, 180 million, it's more beneficial to you to speak your mother tongue than it would be for you to learn one of these languages that may, on the off chance, you may use in future. But that's the slight colonial mindset where, your languages aren't as important because not that many people speak it, or it's not written that much. And then we place the value in that and then decrease the value in our own.
Yeah, wow. So a lot there, exactly. That point about it's perpetuating the status quo. So because Chinese is becoming, they're becoming the economic master, dominating power. So learn Chinese. It's like, well, at some point as Africans, we need to get off this train or this hamster wheel of whatever everyone else is doing. Let's make sure we're part of it, and let's make sure we can fit into whatever they're doing. And we need to get off that, and we need to actually, let's create, our own hamster wheel, if you want to put it that way. Do you know
exactly.
what I
mean? Because like you're saying, there are two sides to every coin, and the side that we tend to look at is the side that says, okay, now I've learned this language, so now my values increase. I'm more employable. I can, now access a certain network or geographic location and do business and trade. But what's really happening is you're gaining this much, but the other side are gaining more. Because now they're thinking, you know what, this person now speaks my language. I don't have to waste time going to get one of their translators, having to pay them to translate in their language and then do all the documentation, pay another graphic designer, whatever, production costs, X, Y, and Z. I just print it in my language. They can read it already. And you know what? When I'm going to the African continent, I can just speak my language. I don't even have to spend time wondering how they greet, learning about their culture and their traditions. I just speak English and expect them to understand. And that's where that sort of master-slave mentality comes in terms of value of language.
Yeah, and you know what? Just to add to what he said, it's really interesting because a lot of people would be asking, well, why doesn't the African just sit down and look at the patterns and spot where we have to make a difference? But that's where the colonized mindset comes in, because as one working as a soldier bee or a soldier ant, your job is to conform and your job is to try and get to the level of your master. So you're constantly trying to get to their level of approval. We're not here to think. And that's the difference. We're here to have somebody think for us. And as long as we have that inferiority complex about who we are, we're never going to place any value on what we have or, where we're coming from. We have to recognize that we are masters of our own game before we can decide that we're going to call any level of power into what it is that we're trying to do. Otherwise, we're just worker bees and soldier ants, and we'll keep soldiering on. Yeah.
And just to say one quick thing before we move on. even I'd say even this instrumentalization of language, by which I mean looking at language as a means to an end, can be a problem, because yes, frankly, my language Lugisu, there's going to be very little economic benefit to me, you know, or very little immediate obvious economic benefit to me learning Lugisu as opposed to learning French or as opposed to learning Chinese, you know. But that's locking that's locking us into this sort of this frame of reference that only sees, because you touched on this earlier when you talked about how language, you know, has it connects us with our art, with our philosophy, with our this, with our that, and all these things. By not connecting with our own languages, we're not able to even think in a way that is not in conformity with how the dominant Western and you know, other powers want us to think. You can't even think.
You can't. You can't.
All you've got is English, then you can only really.
You're one dimensional. You're one dimensional.
English shapes you to think. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, because in Chi, there's certain words you use, and when you do a literal translation, they mean different things, and you know, energies and personality and character. There's when someone has lost somebody, and there's a word that you say, or we say shedim, which is almost like wear harder. So like if you literally translate, it's like put on a cloak of
strength.
Of strength, yeah. You
armor.
know, and it's very, you know, it's very beautiful when you hear it, and even down to your character. We have a word which is subain, which is niwabain. So you combine the two and you gain one from your mother and one from your father, and the two shape your character. And as you said, now it opens your mind up to a different dimension conceptually of seeing the world and living and interacting with it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. And there's quite a few a few comments in the chat there, which thank you everybody. Maybe let's move on to the next one. Oh, Dr. Ma'at, peace to you. Thank you for joining. Nice to have you on board. And Pauline Phillips asked, where are the Chinese now learning the African language? I mean, I think they actually are starting to a little bit, because
they are.
It is beneficial for them to, you know, to be able to
yeah, in their interest.
Yeah.
More quickly dominate and more quickly kind of get us to do what they want.
It's all for control. It's
Yeah.
all for control. Definitely. Yeah. And you know, it's interesting. So I know we're running out of time, so I didn't want to go back to language, but very quickly talking about, you know, the French and how they have that level of dominance now, because, you know, you're thinking to yourself, well, if I speak my language, small spoken language in East Africa, how powerful is that going to be? But not so very long ago, not many people spoke French. And there has to be a level of investment, collective unity and awareness about what it is. Yeah, value and goals set as well about what it is you're trying to do. And those goals may not even be appreciated, or you won't get the benefit of that in your generation. That's the difference between, I think, us and them. They set goals almost like a relay. You know, the first one running the race is not going to be the one to finish it, but they invest and they start in it, and it's generational. So I think that's how we have to see certain things. We want the rewards for ourselves now before we leave this plane, and that shouldn't be the intent at all. So yeah.
Boom, boom. Boom, boom. All right, good. Now let's move on then to number 3. And I mean, we did say we were going to be about an hour. I don't think we're going to be able to do.
No, we're passing this hour. Yeah.
We may have to do a part 2.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I think so. But anyway, carry on for as long as you can. Let's at least go through these.
Top 5. Yeah. Definitely.
Go on. And let me just say as well, like, Destination Africa, everybody, these guys they have launched an on-demand video empowerment project for African children. So there is a link in the description of the video there for you guys to check out. Don't go away without checking those links out. And hopefully we'll have, at some point, we'll be able to kind of unpack that and talk about that a little bit more as well. So yes, over to you guys for the next one.
Sure thing. Okay. Which one?
So we've done names, done language.
Okay, and we're going to move on to religion and spirituality. And this is a new one for me, actually. It's an interesting one because it's a journey that, to be honest, decolonizing the mind is something that started as an adult. So it's been a journey of layers. So the first thing that we came by were the names, and then it was, where we were with our language, and then of course where we were religiously. It's really interesting because as a people, I think religion is something that has really divided us. You would walk the streets of Ghana and there's division between the Muslim, there's division between the Christian. And I remember a few months ago, I was talking to an elder and he spelled something out for me that I had never really looked at from that perspective before. He said, it's almost as though our colonizers came over and not only demonized what we were doing before they arrived, but then they gave us two religions to fight over, and we now do that to ourselves in their absence. And it means before I see you as my brother, I see what was imposed on us beforehand. And I think as a people, we have to, can you just, okay. Okay. I think as a people, we have to, when you look at every other ethnicity, they see their brethren first. They see and understand, I'm going to support you because you're an Arab. I'm going to support you because you're Italian. I'm going to support you because you're such and such. And not only has this divided us, but it also places a level of importance of who we are. And comes between us. So I can't help my Muslim brother as much as I can help my Christian brother, but that wasn't what was standing between us initially. And then on top of that, in order to accept this newfound religion, we have to denounce everything that we once were. So taking on another religion means you have to take on a new name, you have to take on a new language, you have to take on a new lifestyle. What does that mean for us? Mentally, it's almost like a mental psychosis because this creates a level of self-hate that is so deep-rooted that we don't understand. And I'll give you an example. Today, my mom called me. She said, I've watched all your videos that you did yesterday, at the parliament, and I thought it was great. But why are you allowing your son to braid his hair? And she said, you were completely hair. You see, if she was here, she'd be like, put a headscarf on. Put a headscarf on. But yeah, she said, why are you allowing your son to braid his hair? She said, we always used to have these conversations. And before that, you never used to, you were completely against it. And now I've seen on camera. And the thing is, if you're promoting and advocating for our children to be able to go forth and do whatever they need to be able to do confidently, then you need to be the example. So I asked her, Mum, where did men not braiding their hair as an acceptance in our communities come from? So she said, but it has to look nice. It has to look neat. I said, no, think and consider where it really came from. So we had this conversation, and then we even spoke about, I remember I used to have conversations with my mom, and she would say, your hair is not kept. You have to relax it. You can't be wearing your hair in its natural state. And then she herself today said, oh my goodness, that's so true. We even have hair that goes up to the sun, and it doesn't grow downwards, it goes up to the sun. But we have almost denounced all these things about ourselves. And it's because when the systems came in, anything that was contrary to the way our oppressor looked was seen as a threat. So in our minds, it had to be not even compartmentalized. They had to break it down in our system to make us feel like, oh no, you don't want to look like that. You don't want to have natural hair because it's not professional. You don't want to have braids because it's not acceptable, and so on and so on and so forth. And deep in our core, we were taught that this is what gets you closer to the Most High. This is what gets you closer to your ultimate. Whereas I said to her, you know what, the way we used to do things was completely different. It was different because, one, we didn't have a religion. Spiritually, that was innate. It was in us. There's a saying in Chi that says, you can't teach a child God, because the concept of what the Most High is is consciously in your soul. So we've always known that energetically, God is something that lives consciously within our souls, and it's part of it's part of a bigger ecosystem, which is nature, which is looking after the animals, which is the water, which is the earth, which is the wind. And there's nothing about it that demonizes another person's religion or another person's way of life. It's just existing with your brothers and sisters, existing in life, existing in nature, and making sure that you're looking after what you're doing. And most importantly, understanding that if you're in that image, then you can achieve almost everything. Right now, as a people, collectively, we believe that that image is living outside of us, and we have to pray outside of that to achieve what we need. So you would see things in Ghana that could easily be fixed, but the mindset says we have to pray about that before that gets fixed. We see that as an entity outside of us that without we can't fix it. So I think, again, going back to the way that we used to do things, and there is a reason, and there's a reason why that system was in place. It was connected. There was a connection to the source, and you were part of that source. So you had to ensure that you were doing your bit in that source to ensure that everything is moving around in and of itself. So I think religion and understanding your part in spirituality is really, really important as an African.
I'll add a little bit to that and take it from a slightly different level of perspective. Just sometimes having the openness of heart to understand or to want to understand, because sometimes there's that sense where, you know what, let's talk about African religion or what Africans did before Islam or Christianity or traditional beliefs, and across the continent it's slightly different and varied. There sometimes would be that the heart muscles would get tight. Oh no, we're going to go into the realms of juju and black magic and X, Y, and Z. But on the flip side, there is a sense when you want to learn about Buddhism or Hinduism or religions from across the world, the heart doesn't cringe up and get as tight. The blood pressure doesn't rise as much. So most of our children know more about the Chinese New Year, the year of the dog, the monkey, the rat, and so on. Are happy with it. They know about Rama and Sita and Buddha and so on. But you ask them, what do you know about African religion or African spirituality? Even from a head knowledge perspective. Like, okay, I can understand this is the concept. You may or may not agree with it, but they don't have that understanding. So if you don't have the understanding, how can you know whether you like it, don't like it, agree with it, or disagree with it? And I think that's where critically we have to question ourselves and say, okay, maybe I believe in this. But I need to be open enough to understand why my people or why other people or tribes chose this way of life or these concepts of life, philosophy, and religion to support themselves. And hopefully that gives a better understanding. It doesn't have to be right, doesn't have to be wrong, but there needs to be an understanding.
Yeah. Brilliant. That was so powerful, guys. Honestly, that especially that you can't teach a child God. It's like, my goodness me, that's just and it's so kind of, it almost sounds weird because we're so used to this conceptualization of religion as being, no, here's some facts that you need to believe, these facts, because these are the facts, these are the truth of everything. And if you don't believe these facts, which I'm going to tell you about now, then you're this
gone.
and that.
You're finished. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
And it's almost like it almost sounds weird to think what it almost sounds strange to think what Africans they weren't doing that before because they weren't. Everywhere I look, every culture I'm aware of, every book I read or whatever says the same thing. Not even just Africa as well, in other parts of the world as well. Like the conceptions of spirituality, the divine and so forth were not about dogma. We're not about you need to think this and that. But you were born into it for a start. Like you didn't get converted to become a whatever. You were born and thus you were part of the part of it all, part of this cosmos. And I know, Michael, you talked about the tensing up of, oh no, African spirit. Oh, you mean the devil? And like Satanism? Is that what you mean? But people, and I don't, people need to understand that you can't talk about colonialism. You can't understand colonialism. You cannot understand colonialism if you don't recognize the part that the churches in Christianity, and to a lesser extent Islam, because Islam was kind of earlier, played in that. It was the missionaries, the missionary schools, and all that. They were the vehicle through which we learned to hate our languages, to hate our names, to hate our, our customs, to hate our ancestors, to consider our ancestors to be some demons thing that let's stay away from. You know what I mean? That all came through the Christianity, and so that may offend, but I don't know. The truth, what are you gonna do? Run away from it?
The truth, and I think even in that name, they came on a mission. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
The missionaries came on a mission, and to a certain extent, they have been very successful. Today, my mum, when I was speaking to my mum today about the whole concept of everything, she said, Abena, I don't understand. If that fear that we have in us, the education system puts a fear in us to succeed by their standard. Religious systems put a fear in us to get to heaven by their standards. We didn't have any of these things. Before the colonial master arrived, you were good at artisans or artisanry, and that was it. You were going to ensure that you were going to do your kente weaving, you were going to do your basket weaving, you're going to do all of these things, know about your resources to enhance your economy. As it stands, the education system now is completely being controlled, and our curriculums are based on what they give us, and we raise our children to go and work for them. And they've added to their curriculums things like how to know and understand resources. And so they raise their children to come to our space and rule over us. Nothing has changed. The only thing that's changed about colonialism is the mind. We're no longer physically under control, but we're now mentally under control. So it just goes to show, even, as we're talking about religion, there was no word for devil. There was no word for, in our languages, it wasn't there. We were told that our religions, our spirituality was devilish. And now we have accepted that that's what it is. It has a connotation. So until we say, this is not what it is, go and truly find out why it's been demonized. Again, it's not going to change. And you find that these Western countries, many of them are actually adapting and adopting the things that our ancestors used to do, and they'll give it a new name, and that makes it okay. But again, we have to define our own narrative. Otherwise, we're constantly going to be living under somebody else's rule, and it's as simple as that. Yeah, it's as simple as that.
Brilliant. Yeah. That's so true as well. Like, one of the things. There's this thing, walking barefoot. When I grew up, all I'd be so embarrassed that images from the motherland, like these children and people, this is just terrible. Come now, fast forward a couple of decades, and they've got a thing called earthing, where you can buy a mat. And all that. You can even buy a mat. They're like, instead of like just go out in your barefoot and walk on the grass or whatever, you buy this mat, and they say, it's got all the electromagnetic frequencies as if it was outside, and then you can get all the benefits. Like, guys, these people are like trying to sell you back your culture in some deformed way. Like, just listen. Oh my gosh, that's really brilliant. Yeah. Okay. Good. Oh, and I just want to say, just while everyone's here, I am doing this study of this book called Urugu, an African-centered critique of European cultural thought. And funnily enough, the chapter that I'm on now, chapter 2, is about religion and ideology. So that's why I'm so confident in saying that what I just said there about understanding the role of Christianity specifically and colonialism, because it's just hand in hand. It's not to attack people. It's not to attack anyone's faith or whatever. It's just a reality that you just have to understand the role it played, and as far as liberating ourselves from the reality that colonialism has created, we're going to have to grapple with that. People who are maybe Christians or Muslims or whatever, if you're African, you're still African. let's come together and let's grapple with this and try and understand how we can better, like you were saying there as well, like at least just be open to understanding some of our pre-colonial spiritual systems. Just understand them, just recognize the basics before you run away from them, because that terror of, oh no is you know, it's designed. That's designed. That's exactly what it was designed to do, is to demonize our culture to the point that on a visceral level, it's just like you might as well be asking someone to go and murder someone. Do you know what I mean? Just thinking about anything African spirituality, you may as well just be saying that. It's on a par. Do you know what I mean? So
but you know, it's funny because when we talk about everything being cyclical, those were the results of when you asked in the past about why we had to do certain things. There were consequences for it. So it then trickles on, and those feelings are stirred back up when you decide that, you know, you want to have a conversation with your brothers and sisters about these things. Those same emotions that were, you can't talk about this, and the brutalization of wanting to even ask, you know, the question about why do we have to do this, and why, all of it comes back. So there's a reason why. It's really powerful. It's really powerful. But I have to agree with what you're saying, you know, just at least find out. It's not a criticism. Find out about what your ancestors were doing. There's something they must have been doing right in order for you to be alive today. So what are the dynamics about them? You know? Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I remember there was one of the wars with the Zulus and the British. I think that there was one of the wars the Zulus won. And I think Zulu tradition is once the dead body is there, in order to release the spirit, they basically, the British thought that they were bludgeoning the bodies so that they couldn't be given a respectful burial, where the Zulus were doing it because they felt that the spirit needs to leave the physical body. Okay, so who was right and who was wrong? They were doing it based on their spiritual understanding of releasing the spirit from the dead body, and they thought they were doing the British a favor. And the British felt that, hey, these guys are disrespecting us by not leaving us a body that we can take away and go and bury elsewhere. You know, and firstly, it's about, like you said, Ellie, just having that understanding, seeing both sides of the coin and saying, okay, this is what happened, and then decisions can be made from there.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, really love that. Really love that. Now, what shall we do, guys? Because we're on we've just done number 3 of the 5.
Yeah, we've only done number 3. Hey, Charlie.
We haven't discussed the course as well. So it's live and open. Let's strategize how we're gonna play this. I'm happy, you know. I mean, I'm happy to carry on, but
okay.
You know, I'll say let's jump into the course. I think we've got enough for now. We can talk forever. We can go. For 5 or 6
and the
hours.
thing is, they may even touch some of the things that we were going to discuss. So we'll try and incorporate that in the call. So that'll be fun.
What I find pretty much when you're talking about the names, and then you went into languages, is like kind of repeating sort of what because you know it's and the spirituality and stuff. They're all one and the same, almost. Just different facets of the same phenomenon. So I think you're probably right. I think we've probably it's clear. So let's because you know this particular stream today, whereas I normally do my my theory and you know all this stuff, and it's all very it's all very good and lovely, and I love it. I love
that. I'm gonna have to get one of those. Where did you get that book from, Ellie?
Amazon, actually. Got it from Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah, much as I I like to not frequent that shop, but you know,
I hear you.
But let's bring it to the to the grassroots now of actual. Okay, cool. So what? All right, all this. So what now? So what you guys tell us about your program that you've just recently launched, and the floor is open for you to really elaborate and and instill some knowledge and encourage everyone to get on board, particularly for our children, please. So I'll be quiet, I'll mute, and away you go.
Okay, so as I touched on my story a bit earlier in the conversation, I got an awakening moment where I realized that, my language was more than just something superficial, and it connected me not only to my past, but also to the future. And fast forward, on that trip, I met Abena. Fast forward, we got married, had children. And we said, you know what? I don't want my children to go through what I went through. I want them to know who they are and understand, whether we lived in the UK, Japan, US, wherever, Brazil, my children need to know who they are. So when they were born, we had a discussion about names, and we were going back and forth as to what a child's first name should be. And then I said, that one, because I wanted his name to show that, it was a Ghanaian name. If he achieved anything great in life, any plaques, anything marked in stone, if someone came and looked at it, straight away I want them to be able to say, he's got a Ghanaian name. So that was something that was important to us. In the home, we said, you know what? At the time, my tree wasn't that good. And I said, I have to pull my socks up and do what I could. I was 30 years old at the time. No spring chicken by any means, but I needed to do it for not only to show him as an example that even though you're not the greatest at speaking it, you need to show the effort. And I need to show him that it's important to me. So we made Tree the language of the home. Tree came before English, so we would always speak Tree, and unless we were stuck, the dictionaries didn't have it, we looked online, we called a friend, a family member, and if we couldn't get the word, then we'll stick an English word in there. So fast forward a couple of years, our second came, it was continuing. People started asking us like, wow, how do you guys do it? Living in the UK, your children can speak, read, write, Tree. They were about 3-4 years old at the time. And so many people were asking, and we said, you know what? Let's open this up to the community. So we, in South London, we started physical workshops and just invited everybody. It wasn't just about Ghanaians or learning Tree. It was about Africa. It was about creating a space where people can come and learn more about Africa. So we had Africans from the diaspora, from the Caribbean. We had, people from the north. So many people came. And started to learn, and it just became a great space. Throughout our years of the physical classes, we learned Goza, Shona, Swahili, a bit of Yoruba, and a bit of Hausa, just to mix up and to give people a sense of African culture. We moved to Ghana. Fast forward a bit, COVID kicked in. Ellie joined the courses with his family. We had different things from entrepreneurship to a jollof cooking special where people made food at home.
Top chef.
And then, we said we wanted to give people the opportunity to join and enjoy what Destination Africa had of sparking that interest, inspiring Black children to know about themselves, and to be intentional for parents to know and to provide that knowledge and that value system. Because if they empower their children through their identity, through who they are, they would have unshakable confidence and will be able to take on the world in all things. So we added that to the program, created a specifically on-demand format, which is designed to be as engaging as possible, even though it's on demand, and just allow families and communities to join the Afro Parenting and Destination Africa Village. So last month we launched it. So it was almost 2 years in the making, just to make sure the content was right and everything. And we're proud to present the Destination Africa Academy. And in it, we have different mini courses from entrepreneurship, human psychology. We have resources to learn Tree, and all of these tie into the ethos of patience, unity, and respect, which is our motto. And as we aim to build the learners of today to become the leaders of tomorrow, and to inspire the parents as well to come alongside their children and to, hold their hand through it, have conversations with it, and teach them about some of the things from financial literacy, share their journey and their challenges, and hopefully just to impact the next generation so they can live out their potential. So yeah,
absolutely. I mean, the only thing I would add to that is that, when you look at Africa as a whole, there's a saying that says, "He who owns Africa owns the world," and that's simply because of the world's dependency on Africa and its resources. And when you look at where we are and what we have, we should not be at the bottom of the food chain, so to speak. So if we are, then really it's everything to do with mindset. And it's interesting that we want our children to have a confidence in themselves. But when you look at the root word of confidence, it actually means to trust in oneself. Contrary to the popular belief of being able to express and having bravado amongst people and being better than the person that's next to you is very much having a confidence in oneself. And I think when you look at us as a people, we don't have the confidence in ourselves because we're allowing ourselves to be dictated to by each and every single person that we encounter. And until we say we want to even understand exactly who we are, what we stand for, the value systems, and where we're coming from, we're going to keep going round in this loop constantly and continuously. And I think what's really painful is when you even look at the word heritage. Heritage means something that is of your inheritance. It's ours to claim. It's not for somebody else to come into our space and say to us, this is what belongs to you, and so you can have X, Y, Z. It should be the other way around. You've come into our space and you can have a share of this if we so believe, in that collectively. But because we're so divided mentally, whatever the mind dictates, the body follows. And so as a people, I think we really have to sit down and understand what is important to us. Is it that we want to be, Michael always says, Echo is always talking about, being entertained. And, if it's something that's entertaining, something that's going to make us laugh, something that's going to be about music, or we're going to be in that. We're going to be talking about that. But as it stands, our value systems are somewhere else. And what are we leaving our children, Ellie, is the bottom line. What are we really laying down as a foundation for them? We're sat in front of this table, and the foundation that we have here are the legs. If the legs weren't there, we wouldn't have a table. And that's exactly how, sometimes I see our children, we are the legs for their table. And if we're not putting things in place that's going to make them become a success in their own right, even before they're thinking about global success, a success in their own right because they believe in themselves, just fighting one losing battle. So we need to just, really get on that and put our minds together, put our heads together and say, we're going to be the game changers because we have it in our hands. Yeah. So Destination Africa. Yeah. Make sure that, you look, go on the website, see what it's going to be able to do for your children, see how we're going to work together collectively. And because things change in the blink of an eye. These children that we're raising are going to be the leaders making decisions for us. Very, very few years time to come. I look at our parents now and I can't believe that they're of that age and where,
I always say that there's, as Abena says, it's cyclical. So in life, we start at that dawn and then through life, we go up through round to, and as parents, we're in the midday sun right now. We're the ones making the decisions for our children. We decide what they wear, where we live, where we go and so on. But some of us are still in that childlike state, wanting other people to make the decisions or are not intentional enough that the outcomes they want will, are very likely or more probable to happen. And we have to take control of that because other cultures are. We commend them when they do, but are we looking back and seeing what hard work they're putting in their children to say, you know what, in order for my children to shine in this culture and against this current, I need to do something different. And we wanted to create a platform that did that, gave families that opportunity and say, you know what, come on board and see the potential for your children.
Yeah. Brilliant. I think, I think what you're doing is just because we met, what was it? We were talking about this the other day. We met, the first time we met was years ago, wasn't it? Like 2016 or something like that. 2015.
Was that on that course that you did?
No, we did a video. We were talking about, actually, it tied back into this. We were talking to African or Black people about their heritage and values and so on, and we were critiquing the conversation. And this was when Eli had the highest high top. It was high.
Hey, Eli, half a day.
So that's and it's amazing because what you're doing is, it feels unique to me. I'm not aware of anybody else who's doing that has been doing what you're doing, and I think we're at an interesting time where there are a lot of, or more and more anyway, Africans from the diaspora moving to the motherland and so forth. What I love about you guys is that you've done that. You're doing that, but you're not just, okay, here I am. I've got this nice house, and we're doing this, and everything's great for me and my family. You're basing everything that you're doing on, doing your part to empower all of us, the African the African diaspora as a whole, which is brilliant. So it's really important what you're doing. I think, looking back in tens of years, 20, 30, 40 years time, we'll, obviously the world's going to be very different by then. But I think we'll look back at the Afro-parenting villages, Destination Africa, the work that you've done as pivotal. I can envisage, for example, many people kind of copying what you do, or like using the models that you're setting up and replicating those models, in other domains, in other ways. So it's really important that I hope you feel like you've got that the confidence of many of us around the world. I hope you understand that you're so valued and so you're just so important to us as Black people around the world. And just please know that. Please be aware of that. I know for me personally, when we did the course, I said it at the top of the video, but the course was revelationary for if that's the right word, for me and for my son. Because one of the things actually that I've written down here, I wanted to make sure that I say, is that you had very high expectations of what, to me at the time, they felt very high expectations as to what you were, seeking the children to do. So I distinctly remember my son he must have been, I think he was 3. He was like one of the younger ones. And, there were children there who were 7, 8, 9. So initially I was like, oh, but guys, he's only very young and he can't sit and concentrate. And like, Echo, you were just like, nah, it's fine. No, it's fine. He'll be fine. Just come on.
Just throw the boy in the deep end.
Yeah. This guy, like, does he not, but I had been so shaped by the low level of expectations that we tend to have for children here. And then I saw he did it, you got him to do presentations about the business idea, and I just thought, well, there we go. If you have a ceiling here, then that's the highest they're going to be. But if you have a ceiling here, they're going to whatever they do, they're going to achieve much higher. So that's one of the kind of key things that I just kind of express to everyone watching, that when it comes to children that you're aware of, this course is going to stretch your children in a way that you're going to be so startled by and so proud and so happy about. And then the other thing to say as well, is that I don't live in London anymore. I'm outside of London, and here there's not that many Black people, which means there are not many, because Saturday schools is one of the big, supplementary schools are, very, very important. Our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean in the 60s and 70s, they pioneered supplementary schools, which were so pivotal to where we are as a people now, the good of where we are as a people now. We don't have that outside London. Once you're outside London, you've left.
You're on your own.
Yeah.
Left the manor. That's it. Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the gaps that this course and the work that you're doing really fills, is that you can do it anywhere, wherever you are in the world, even if you live in the most, not black of black small villages in the middle of Fife in Scotland. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Get your Wi-Fi, get your course, and that's it. Exactly. We're good. But I really have to say, having your little one, Eli, in the group was just fundamental, because you felt it, you've seen it, and I think you can actually just be testament to what it is that the course does. But I think as parents as well, we have to start thinking outside the box. Sometimes we talk about our children having critical thinking skills and being able to think outside the box, but that all starts with us as parents. And sometimes that call to action means we're going to have to give some parents a kick up the behind to say, we're messing around. As parents, we are really, really messing around. And it's not something that that should be taken lightly at all, because whatever we see our children do in a few years' time, those are things that we have laid down for them to do. So it doesn't matter if you do live in Fife in Scotland, or you do live in India, or wherever it may be. you've got to say, right, I'm not going to try and make things comfortable for my children, just to see them have a cushy life and suffer for it later. Your children are capable of succeeding. They're capable of thinking for themselves. They're capable of thinking outside somebody else's box, regardless of what they're told about who they are when they go to school or wherever. They're here for a purpose. And the only people that are going to allow them to see that is us, the parents. And we do want to be looking back in a few years when we're in that Zimmer frame and we've got that walking stick and saying, do you know what? We did a good job. We did all right. They're standing on their own 2 feet, and that is it. We're going to be interdependent now, i.e., you can see there is an awakening happening. There isn't that divide with the before. It's not so long ago that we used to see that Jamaican doesn't want to have anything to do with the African, we just didn't have a belief in our history, but all of that is coming to fruition. So in a few years' time, if we get this right, we're gonna have to stretch out and say, right, we do need each other. We do have to depend on each other for everything that we're doing, because it doesn't just take a village to raise a child. It takes a village to raise a whole community, and we are a communal people. And what does that look like in a few years' time for our children and our children's children? So it's like, come on, parents,
step it up.
Yeah, step it up.
And I always say, like, sometimes, we talk about some of the symptoms of being raised by colonial parents. Now, we all have. If you're a Black person, you've been through a colonial, your parents have been through a colonial system, and that's leaked onto us. So our starting point was that system. It was a laid back approach to things that mattered for us. And what's happening is some of us are passing that on to our children. And therein lies the issue. If I said to you, oh, you've seen this nice house, and someone says, oh, what's the price of this house? And they say, oh, it's £400,000. First thing that comes to your mind is you shriek, and you're like, that's way too expensive, man. I'm not paying that. And then, once your heart races a little bit, you stop and you say, okay. And the estate agent says, the house down the road sold for $450. The house 3 doors over there sold for $500,000. So next thing you realize is that, what? This is the level. This is the level. If you want a house on this nice road, this is the standard. And it will take this amount in order to secure that house. And what tends to happen at that point, that's when you realize you actually have a deal getting it for $400,000, because your value system is too low. Other people are doing more. They have set a high standard for their children. So when their children succeed, it's not a surprise.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to push them as close to their potential as possible. Where we are just doing enough to get by, and 1 or 2 are pushing, but I'm not satisfied with 2% or 3% of Black children living out their potential. We want the whole cart. We want everyone to come along. But you must understand that it's going to take something. It's going to take reaching out and pushing your children to step out. So, values is everything. I'm doing great, but doing great according to who? You need to be doing great according to your limit, to your potential, and raising your standards up. And that's one place we, as a people as a whole, generally fall short.
No, definitely. And you know what, just to add to what you were saying, when you were talking about in a few years' time, maybe we may see a lot of people doing what we're doing. There's that saying of imitation is always the highest form of flattery. Do you know what? If there's a few people wanting to go out there and do it, absolutely, there is more than enough room for all of us in the market to do what we're doing. But it goes to show that we're also progressing, we're moving forward, and this is it. And not everybody's supposed to have maybe have a platform like what you have, Mindful Black Dad, or have a platform like what we're doing. But everybody is required to do what they're doing in their space and and with their capacity. So when we look at other ethnicities that are doing really well, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Make sure your child has a name from wherever it is that you come from. Because I always say to Mike, you're never going to meet a Scottish guy whose son's name is Olatunde. It's just not. Why would they do that? They're just not going to do it. They're not trying to speak to them in the language at home, and then they get to Sainsbury's and go and get you their bread. It's like, it's like, come on, my people. It's pride, and it's pride everywhere. And children subconsciously see that. So when they know that you're prideful, regardless of where you are, they take pride in it, because they know, come on, I have to be recognized as well. I'm not trying to hide under your coattails and, trying to be accepted. So it's all of these things. Do what you can in your capacity with what you have. And collectively, it's all going to come together. It
Yeah.
really is. Yeah.
So tell us. We will close soon. But just tell us. I'm just gonna. Oh wait, hang on. Where is it now? There it is. So here's the. Let's just put it up here. There's the landing page. Can you see that? Can you guys see that?
We can, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So if you could just tell us a little bit, I've put a link to the course description there, guys, if in the comments there. But if you just tell us a little bit about the overall structure. Then is like how many sessions do you get if you sign up to do for the course, and some of the practical details that people need to know with regard to the empowerment program, please.
Okay, so the Academy is a portal and a platform which has many aspects to it. So we run mini courses on various topics, which we say, they don't spend a lot of time teaching you in schools. And they range from things like entrepreneurship, financial literacy, human psychology, and loads of different short courses. Now, these short courses are primarily in video form, and they have additional supplementary materials to help the children complete assignments. And within those assignments, they're trying to build their presentation skills and their public speaking skills at the same time. So a lot of the courses tie in together and there's overlap. But one of the main things I always say to people is we run these courses from an Afro perspective. So someone said, oh, why do I need your financial literacy course? I'm like, well, why do you need it? Because you can, if you just want a financial literacy course, go online and find some elsewhere. But this is focused on Africa. All our examples are on Africa. We share African history. We throw language in it and give you a wider perspective of the African continent. What did Africans use before money? How is their money system being affected by their recent history? And where do we move and tie in other things like blockchain, cryptocurrency, and all these things? So we have short courses in that as well. We have language elements as well. So even if you can't trace your heritage back to the African continent, if you want to, you can learn an African language. There's a family in Ghana here who are from America, learnt Chi, can speak it fluently. I'm telling you, they can probably speak it as good as the top 5 percentile of Chi speakers in Ghana. And who are you to tell them they don't belong? Because their skin is their passport, and they've reclaimed their heritage. So once you sign up the course, there's a one-off price if you pay for a year. That gives you a year subscription to all the courses. Constant and new courses are coming up. We have agriculture, farming, medicine, short courses coming up. And with that, it gives you access to our online weekly Zoom. So in order to add interaction, we have a weekly course, a weekly live where people can join in. We have quizzes on the African continent.
Great.
Presentation sessions where we'll help you present, almost like when we did the COVID time courses. Yeah. So there's a lot involved in there. And the key thing is you can take it at your own pace. So some parents, Saturdays don't work well for them. They watch the videos with their children during the week. If the children are slightly older, they can do it as almost like a self-assessment, self-mini projects within. And we have a whole development program, awards and certificates as well. So that's the program in a nutshell.
Yeah.
We can guarantee that confidence in your child so much that if it doesn't work, we'll give you your money back. But we have seen it work time and time again. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. And like I said, I can vouch for that for sure. I saw it not just in my son, but I saw it in the other children as well. I remember there was one youngster who, he found it quite hard work initially. He was, he always have to be cajoled by his dad, but then toward the end, there were times I was like,
"You just take over." Yeah.
His child over. Like, what's happened? He was just so alert on it. He was helping other children with. And I think that's one thing I'll just definitely want to say is that you guys' roles yourselves and the others, your children as well, Asida and Chira. I don't know, is the youngest one? He's not involved yet, is he? In some of these.
Oh yeah,
he is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think at the time maybe he wasn't because he was.
He wasn't at the time. No, he was too young then. Yeah.
But you guys, you bring that level of that energy and that kind of warmth and just that vibrance and that sort of that passion that you bring that I mean, it's some of that stuff you can say, who cares about that? But frankly, you go to your average school here in the UK, you're not getting none of that. There's going to be none of the passion, none of the vibrancy, none of the energy, none of the, the love as well, the basic love of, of for our people that, it just comes through in the teaching, in the lessons, in the exercises and stuff like that, for sure. And I'm glad you've got the weekly live, actually, because the one thing I did have in the back of my mind was that I would miss, do you know what I mean? It would be sad to miss out on the actual interaction. Yeah. But great, you've got that in there, so boom.
And that's the thing, we put it in there because we said, you know what, we don't want people to grow in isolation. We want them to know that the benefits of the internet is that place, like you said, you could be in Fife and connect to someone from Melbourne or Kigali, and we can bring that together on a live and bring them all to your bedroom and bring families to you so that, you can feel and sense that you are a true global African.
That level of support, really. Yeah.
Brilliant. Now, before we close, the last thing I wanted to just say is someone asked a question here. Nanette B. Thank you, Nanette, by the way. You've been doing so many comments here, so thank you for those. And Kwame Abwaje and others. And Nanette said this was something that I was thinking when I was talking about, what you're doing is going to go down in, is just so powerful. And we're going to look back in decades and be like, this is brilliant stuff. You need to recognize that what you're doing is so powerful stuff. And I wrote down here that I want this to continue. And I think it is important. I was wondering if maybe you do have a way, like Nanette asked here, if there's a way that people can support your efforts to expand your great work, even if it doesn't necessarily mean that they, people might not have children or whatever. But is there a way that people can sort of support you guys, what you're doing, other than?
Sure. Yes, there are various. So firstly, getting the message out there. So we have various platforms. At the moment, we have the Afro Parenting Village, which is a WhatsApp group. You can access that through our Instagram. If you check on our bio, the link is there and you can join. So that's a platform for not only Black parents, but also those who don't have children. It's preparing them for the state of parenthood from an Afro perspective. You're not just a parent because you have children. You're an uncle, you're an auntie, you're a niece to someone, and your influence in their life can impact the children. So we have that platform, and there's daily topics, different conversations to build people up holistically. We also have a partner program for the Destination Africa Academy. So we want to get it out to the four corners of this round world. And just spread the message to those brothers and sisters in the Americas, in Asia, in Europe, everywhere. So if you want to, definitely reach out to us via email at info@thedestinationafrica.com and drop us a mail. We'll definitely be in contact.
And is there a way, the info@thedestinationafrica.com?
That's correct. Yeah. Info.
Yes.
That one, yeah?
That's it, yes.
Good old-fashioned email, yeah. So you can get in touch by Insta, but if you're old school, you can send an email. How quaint.
Only you would put it that way. Oh gosh, but yeah, no, definitely we're doing what we can. We're hoping to start a few Patreons soon so that people can contribute.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You
need to set up a Patreon because you should by all rights get flooded with support because this is there's not many. There's one or two. Like there's some a brother and a sister I know, Dalian and Verona, who do Ancestral Voices, which is a platform all about the African spirituality, raising the understanding of that. I put them in this category, and I put you guys in the category of this is infrastructure. This is like African infrastructure we're talking about here. It's not just It's not just talk and whatever for the sake of it. This is this is education. These are
action.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
definitely. Please do get that set up, and I'm sure there'll be many people who want to support. So yeah, are there any other points that you would like to? Sadly, the this linear Western concept of time that we're all changed to.
Oh,
This is
no.
it.
Yes. So before we finish up, would you like to share any final thought, final words, final affirmations, whatever? Just say something. Say something.
Say something, little something. Okay. All right.
Ladies first.
You know what? He's done it again. He's done it again.
Good move.
You know what? I would say, like you said, we are the people. You, my Echo, myself, are those who have now got the ball in motion. It's almost like you're climbing up a mountain, and everybody else is going down. This is the level that we're at now, and it's really hard to go against the grain because a lot of minds are in a different place. But if we truly believe in what we're saying, that is going to be the drive for what we're doing. And our children, they're more inclined to do what they see us do than do what they hear us say. So we have to continue to be that example for our children. And it's not always easy because we are also somebody's child and we can see what the majority are doing. But I have to say, we have to come to an understanding and a realization and almost an acceptance that if we don't go against the grain, and if we don't make a conscious decision to say we are going to do this for ourselves, this is not only going to be a conversation, but in about 60 years' time, we're going to be doing the same thing. So what we're doing here, the decisions that we make and the actions that we take are so powerful in that they are going to have a knock-on effect on everything that not only we do, but what our children do. And although we may see it as a really big responsibility, a bigger responsibility is failing them. And an even bigger responsibility is understanding that what we're doing now is going to end us in the right place in due time. So let's continue plowing, let's continue investing in our children and ensuring that we are doing our part for the next generation. That is it.
And that's it. Well said. I'll just like to thank Ellie for this opportunity.
Yes.
And just to having a conversation and sharing it with our community. And guys, if you're watching, just like the video, share it with a friend, give it to someone on a replay.
Yeah.
And let's spark a conversation. I had an awakening moment in 2003, and I wish, and it's my prayer. Which one? It's my wish, my desire. It's my desire.
That one, you're just talking to yourself.
That you know what, we take the necessary steps.
Yeah.
You know what, Rome wasn't built in a day. Accra wasn't built in a day. Nairobi wasn't built in a day. But we must take the necessary steps. And the first thing starts with decolonizing our mind, one step at a time. Draw yourself to one step of action. Today, I'll say, you know what, go on the Destination Africa Academy website and check it out. Get informed. You know what, drop us a DM on Instagram, DA Academy. Somebody will reach out to you. Take that step to empower your children and to set a foundation that your grandchildren will be proud of. So, Ellie, thank you again.
And thank you guys so much for just tuning in, listening, being part of this community. Join the Afro Parenting Village. Let's make something work for our children. And thank you guys. We're just looking at the comments. We're touched. We're very humbled.
Absolutely. Okay. Wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyable. And forward ever.
Backwards never. Yeah.
Said yes, indeed. Cool. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of the Saturday morning or afternoon or evening, whichever part of the world you're in. And do, if you can, just that thing about sharing with your connections is so important. It's free. It doesn't take a second to do it. Just post it on Twitter, post it on Facebook, post it on wherever, WhatsApp. Share it with your people, and let's just get our networks kind of buzzing with this, with noise about this Destination Africa, the next iteration in the Destination Africa journey of this powerful journey of enlightenment and of empowerment that they're doing. So on that note, I want to wish you all a wonderful Saturday. Take care.
Should we teach him the sign off?
Oh, he knows
I
the
know
sign.
it.
You know the sign off? Do you know
do.
the destination of the sign off?
Is
Yeah.
it like
Yep.
Two taps on the shoulder,
two
Flick
tap?
it back.
finger wave.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Hey.
Hey, chill.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Bye
guys.
for now.
Great. Thank you,
Bye,
Ellie.
bye, bye,
Bye-bye.
Very